Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got a stack of notes here that are going to take us into a really uncanny intersection of history and science fiction. Usually we look at one or the other, tech trends or a historical event, but this source material just smashes them together.
Yeah.
And it actually made me shiver a little bit.
It is a unique piece. We're looking at a story called Test of Personality by Dmitry Bilenkin. And I think unsettling is exactly the right word for the atmosphere.
Right. So let's set the scene before we get into the heavy stuff.
Yeah.
The story puts us in a boarding school, but not, the Harry Potter kind.
No, not at all.
This is the 21st century, or maybe near future. It's this hyper-modern, silent place, an internet. And you have this teacher, Posplov, walking down a corridor late at night. Everything is sleek, it's quiet.
And then he hears a sound that absolutely does not belong there.
Exactly. He hears a voice from a dark classroom. But it's not a student. It's this high-pitched, terrified falsetto.
And the language is all wrong.
So wrong. The syntax is ancient. The voice is screaming, "Have mercy, the vile slander of my enemies," and the envy of slanderers.
It's like a bad 19th century melodrama is playing out in a high-tech lab.
And in a way, that's exactly what's happening. This sets up the mission of this deep dive. Pospelov, the teacher, he looks into the room and he sees his students. They're just modern, bare-limbed teenagers sitting in the dark.
But the room itself is split.
It's been sliced in half by a hologram. On one side, you've got the modern classroom with this acmolith flooring, some kind of futuristic material. And on the other side,
You have the 19th century, a study with parquet floors, a tiled stove, a high desk with a goose quill.
you can even see the spire of the Peter and Paul Fortress out the window. It's a perfect simulation of St. Petersburg in the 1830s.
And standing at the desk is the man they're interrogating, the defendant.
Faddey Bulgarin. Now, I'll be honest, before reading this, I didn't know much about Bulgarin. I knew the name, but not the weight of it.
Well, that's common if you're not a specialist in, say, the golden age of Russian literature. But to give you the context, the quick version, Bulgarin is essentially the archetype of the snitch in Russian culture.
Okay.
He was a journalist, a critic, a writer, but his real job, his vocation, was serving the third section.
The secret police.
The Tsar's secret police. He was the man who would smile at you at a literary salon, praise your poetry, and then go home and write a detailed report on why your metaphors were a threat to national security.
Wow. So the premise here is just incredible. You have these calm, hyper-logical 21st century kids holding a trial for a man who died 2 centuries ago.
And the hook is, can these kids, with all their historical data and superior logic, can they actually corner a master manipulator?
Or is his slippery survivalist logic just going to be too much for them?
It sounds like it should be an easy win for the future, right? But as we get into the text, we realize this isn't just a history lesson, it's a psychological duel.
Before we get to the interrogation, I want to stick a pin in the tech. Because Bilenkin doesn't just say magic hologram. The way he explains this ghost is fascinating. He calls it phantomatics.
This is one of my favorite parts of the source. Bilenkin uses a physics analogy to describe it, the reversed bicycle wheel paradox.
I had to read that paragraph twice, but it's brilliant. So normally the bicycle wheel paradox is that when a spoked wheel spins fast enough, the spokes, they seem to vanish. The solid object looks like transparent air.
Exactly, you can see right through it. But Bilenkin flips it. He says this computer takes phantom nothingness, just data, light, information, and spins it so fast, vibrates it so effectively that it appears solid.
So it looks like flesh and velvet and wood. But if you reached out to touch it,
your hand would pass right through.
Wow.
And just think about what that metaphor implies about Bulgarin's character. He looks like a solid human being. He looks like a statesman, but inside, it's just spinning air. There's no core.
That is a killer observation. The tech mirrors the soul. But the simulation, it's not just visual, right?
Yeah.
It's cognitive.
That's the scary part. The computer didn't just model his face. It ingested his memoirs, his newspaper articles, police reports about him, letters, everything.
So it built a model that.
It built a psychological model that thinks, feels, lies, and panics exactly as the real Bulgarin would.
So the students are effectively interrogating his soul.
Or a mathematical approximation of it. And the students, they're led by this boy, Igor, and they are ready. The text mentions they're wearing meditation phonoclips.
Which I took to mean they are somehow mentally linked. Or at least using tech to keep their emotional baselines perfectly flat.
They're acting like a collective judge. They're clinical, called. Yeah. And they start the interrogation with the biggest name in the book.
Alexander Pushkin.
The Mozart of Russian literature. And the man Bulgarin spent years pretending to befriend while stabbing him in the back. Igor asks him, point blank, if you understood Pushkin's value, why did you hound him?
And this is where that reverse bicycle wheel personality just kicks in. Because Bulgarin doesn't fold. He doesn't say, yeah, I was jealous.
Not at all.
He instantly pivots to this high-minded defense. He says, I loved him. I printed his poems. I kept his letters as sacred relics.
It's classic gaslighting. He calls the accusations the envy of slanderers. He admits he criticized Pushkin, sure, but he reframes it completely.
He says it was friendly advice.
Right. He was just trying to guide the wayward poet toward worthy service to the Tsar and fatherland.
He sounds so reasonable. He even brings religion into it. He crosses himself, asks God to forgive Pushkin for his arrogance.
That is a masterstroke of manipulation. By forgiving Pushkin, he positions himself as the bigger man. He becomes the victim. He's rewriting history in real time, portraying himself not as a snitch, but as this misunderstood mentor.
And if you were just listening to him, without the data, you might believe him. But the students, they aren't listening with their ears. They're listening with the archives.
Exactly. This is where the Faptomatics turn against him. They don't just argue back, they pull up the receipts. The computer reconstructs a secret note Bulgarin sent to General Benkendorf, the head of the secret police.
A note he probably thought was burned or lost forever.
And the content is just damning. He wasn't offering friendly advice. He attached Pushkin's poems to the note and explicitly told the secret police that they revealed a harmful tendency of thoughts.
He was trying to get him arrested. It's undeniable.
Your reaction from the simulation is visceral. When the students project that letter, Bulgarin turns white. He slumps into a chair. The text says the students actually have to pause the simulation.
Because his toads, their slang for his vital signs, start crashing.
Yeah.
That detail really stuck with me. The simulation is so biologically accurate that the ghost can nearly have a heart attack from the shock of being exposed. It's like his body knows the truth, even if his mouth is lying.
But, and this is why he's a master demagogue, he recovers. He catches his breath. And since he can no longer deny the act, he changes the justification. This brings us to round two.
The ideological chameleon.
Right. He shifts from I was his friend to I was a guardian. He starts arguing that his snitching was actually a public service.
A public service?
He claims he was diagnosing social diseases early so the government could cure them paternally.
Paternally?
Yeah.
That is a terrifying euphemism for a police state. We're just being a strict father.
But to him, it's a valid worldview. He portrays himself as a martyr. He says, look, the liberals hated me because I served the state, but the state hated me because I wasn't servile enough. He paints himself as this guy in the middle, taking hits for the greater good.
The students try to puncture that. They quote a letter where he addresses the secret police chief, de Belt, as father and commander. They're like, you weren't a guardian, you were a bootlicker.
And Bulgarin just waves it off. Oh, that's just Russian family style. It's affection.
And Igor, the student leader, he counters with that brutal analogy. The master beats the serf, and the serf kisses his hand.
But Bulgarin digs in here, and this is where he reveals his true political philosophy. He says, better to unchain a hungry tiger than take the bridle of obedience off the people.
That line stopped me in my tracks. Better to unchain a hungry tiger.
It's the ultimate authoritarian argument. He's saying that chaos freedom is a predator, a tiger, and the only way to keep the tiger in the cage is absolute order. He served the idea of order.
So in his mind, sending a poet to Siberia isn't betrayal, is checking the lock on the cage. He's positioning himself as the necessary evil.
It's a compelling defense in a really twisted way. It gives his actions a noble purpose. But the students, they know his history better than he expects. They know he wasn't always a Russian patriot.
Right. This is where they pull the skeleton out of the closet. Round 3. Because before he was Faddey Bulgarin, the Tsar's loyal servant, he was an officer in Napoleon's army.
He fought against Russia in 1812. He fought against peasants in Spain. He was a mercenary.
So when the students throw this in his face, the patriot mask just falls off.
Immediately.
Right.
And he replaces it with the victim mask. He blames poverty, injustice. He says, I had to eat. But then he pivots to the wolf among sheep defense.
This is the one where he claims he had to betray people to save his own talent.
Yes. He admits he fell into the abyss. He admits he betrayed his friends, like the Decembrists and the playwright Griboidov. But he argues that a writer in Russia is a lamb among wolves.
Okay.
He claims he had to sell out to survive, to preserve his God-given gift for literature.
He essentially argues that the world owes him survival because he's talented. He brings up his bestseller, Ivan Vizigin, claiming God commanded him to save his life so he could write that book.
Which is incredibly arrogant considering history has forgotten his books while Pushkin is immortal, but it's his internal logic. I sacrificed my honor to save my art.
But the students aren't buying it. And this is where I feel like they land the hardest blow. They look at his career, at who he attacked and when, and they propose a theory that is so cynical it hurts.
The market rivalry theory. This is crucial.
They suggest he didn't destroy other authors for the idea of order. And he didn't do it to save his art.
He did it for business.
For business.
Exactly. The students point out the timing. Bulgarin didn't attack Pushkin's politics at first. He only attacked Pushkin when Pushkin started a rival newspaper.
And he attacked the poet Vyazemsky only when it threatened the monopoly of his own paper, the Northern Bee.
It was about market share. He crushed talent because their brilliance made his work look mediocre and their newspapers were stealing his subscribers.
That is such a modern motivation. It strips away all the noble rhetoric about tigers and fatherland. He's not a guardian of the state. He's a monopolist protecting his turf.
And that hits him harder than the treason accusations because it makes him small. It makes him petty shopkeeper of literature who used the secret police to take out the competition.
So let's look at the scoreboard. He's been battered. The students have torn apart his love for Pushkin, his patriotism, his artistic integrity. He's standing there, exposed. You'd think he'd be done.
But he has one final defense. The ultimate fortress. And honestly, this is the part of the story that forces you to stop and think about our own world.
The legal defense.
When they accuse him of bribery, he just shrugs. Everyone does it, it's the custom. But then he expands that. He looks at these kids and says, effectively, I broke no laws.
He says his actions were encouraged by the Tsar. The church found no sin in him. He went to confession. He took communion. The priests absolved him.
He's asking a very dangerous question. If the state approved of me and the church approved of me and I followed the customs of my time, by what law are you judging me?
He's saying, I am clean before the official morality of my time.
And technically, he's right. He was a scumbag, yes, but he was a state-sanctioned scumbag. He flourished within the system, died in his bed, wealthy and respected by the authorities.
Students actually hesitate here, don't they? Because he's found the loophole. He's legally innocent.
But Igor, the student leader, he doesn't back down. He smiles. And that smile terrifies Bulgarin more than all the shouting.
Why? What does Igor see that Bulgarin is missing?
Igor points out that Bulgarin's desperate need to justify himself, this frantic sweating, this shifting from patriot to victim to businessman, proves that he knows he's guilty.
Not guilty before the law, but guilty before history.
Guilty before the conscience he's trying so hard to repress. If he truly believed he was right, he wouldn't be sweating. The biological simulation reveals the truth his words are trying to hide.
And this leads to the climax. And I want to slow down here because the way Bilenkin writes this is just grotesque. The simulation breaks, but it doesn't glitch out with pixels. The character breaks.
It's a complete collapse of dignity. Bulgarin realizes the law argument isn't working on these kids. They represent the judgment of posterity, and they aren't impressed.
So he reverts.
He reverts to that serf instinct we talked about earlier.
He kneels.
He literally falls to his knees in the middle of the study. He trembles. He starts screaming that he wants to repent in the Christian way. He offers to abase himself.
The text describes it as the hasty readiness of a slave used to being trampled. It's not genuine remorse, is it?
No, and that's what makes it so repulsive. It's a survival reflex. If you can't win with logic, you win by becoming pathetic. You beg, you kiss the boot. He's trying to trigger their pity because he has no dignity left to defend.
And the students, they just can't handle it.
They are horrified. You have to remember, these are intellectual, clean-cut teenagers. They were ready for a debate. They were ready to fight a villain.
They weren't ready to see a human being strip himself naked like that.
It's the biological ugliness of it. The toes, his vitals are going crazy. He's shaking, he's slobbering. It's just too real.
Igor frantically rips the control unit from his classmate.
And shuts it down.
The simulation vanishes with a sound like a pistol shot. That image stuck with me. The room goes silent. The ghost is gone. The 19th century study disappears. And they're just back in a dark classroom.
But the feeling in the room has changed completely. Pospelov, the teacher watching from the shadows, he notices it immediately. The students are ashamed.
But why shame? They won, didn't they? They broke him.
Did they win? They exposed him, sure. But Pospelov realizes this test of personality wasn't for Bulgarin. You can't test a computer program. The test was for the students.
It was a test of their endurance.
It was a test of their ability to confront the reality of evil. Not the movie version of evil where the bad guy gives a cool speech and dies with dignity, but the banality of evil, the sliminess of it.
They were prepared for his lies, but they weren't prepared for his lack of self-respect.
Exactly. They saw a man who had talent, who had courage. He was a soldier, but who let the system grind him down until the only thing left was this reflex to kneel. That's a tragedy that's hard to look at. It feels like you're watching something obscene.
It's interesting that the story ends there. It doesn't give us a clear moral of the story wrapped in a bow. It just leaves us with that silence.
I think that's Bilenkin's point. He's forcing the reader and the students to sit with that discomfort.
So bringing this back to us, to the listener, why does a sci-fi story about a 19th century snitch matter today?
I think it goes back to Bulgarin's final defense, the one that almost worked. I followed the rules.
Right. The distinction between what is legal and what is right.
Bulgarin was a pillar of his community. He was successful, he was good by the standards of the state, and yet he was a monster.
It suggests that morality exists completely outside of the law. You can follow every rule, pay your taxes, be respected by authority, and still be fundamentally rotten.
And Bilenkin is asking us to look at our own times. We don't have the third section secret police today in the same way, but we have structures. We have corporate ladders. We have bureaucracies.
Who are the Bulgarins of today? The people who are just doing their job, just following policy, but who are morally hollow.
And the scarier question, if we put them on trial, if we stripped away their job titles and their legal defenses, would we see that same hasty readiness to kneel? Would we see that same lack of a core self?
That's the real test of personality. It's not about what you do when the world is watching. It's about what's left of you when the structures protecting you are stripped away.
Is there a solid person there? Or just a reverse bicycle wheel? Solid on the outside, but empty air in the middle.
A phantom. That is a haunting thought to leave on.
It's certainly something to mull over.
We'll let you sit with that one. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into the archives of conscience. We'll catch you on the next one.